Good morning, Facebook and Get Inspired Michiana. We are here for Friday morning Life Inspired. I'm Diane Bennett with Remax 100 in Indiana, Inspired Homes in Michigan, and we have a guest today named Rose Schwartz, who is a longtime friend. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So fun to see you again after many years.
Many years.
I can't believe we've let this much time go by and not talk or do coffee or whatever.
I know.
So we get to share your story today.
Yeah.
So for those of you joining us for the very first time, Life Inspired Stories are just all about following God and what does that look like for different people, because all of us, our relationships with God are our relationships with God. Mine's not yours and yours isn't mine, and neither of us is what TJ's is like. And
Right.
so there's like life was going on and there's some ... turning point. And then sometimes there's numerous turning points.
Right.
But you're probably going to share about one particular one, and then we're going to ask how you're following God after that.
Right.
So how you're
Yes.
inspired. So tell us about some life before a major turning point.
Okay. Like you said, I've had many turning points in my life. So as I was praying about what I should share, I just felt like God directed me towards one specific one. But some backstory is 2004. My family and I, we were in a car accident, and my husband was killed, and my son was, he got a spinal cord injury and is paralyzed from the waist down.
Oh, that's
And so it was rough. And so I had the grief of losing my husband, and then also the grief of losing my son's legs and that mobility. And so it was just grief on top of grief.
Right.
And so so that's a little bit of the backstory, but I wanted to talk about my husband and I's marriage, and
Your first husband or your second
my
husband?
second husband.
Okay.
And so Clint and I met. We met like 2 days after my husband died.
Wow.
And so, but we didn't start a relationship there. We just met. God just put him in my life, but I didn't see him again for a few months. And God just worked out the relationship. And so we got married less than a year later, which was really quick.
Right.
I would not recommend doing that. But it was really quick. But God was in it. God was just in it, and the kids were all about it, and because we don't want to get married without the kids,
Right.
Being
And you
okay
have
with
5
it.
between you.
And we have 5 kids between us. I have 3, John, Michael, Ben, and Becca, and Clint had 2, Michael and Anna. And so, yeah, it was a whirlwind. So we got married in less than a year, and I didn't have
How
time.
long had he been divorced before you guys met? Do you know?
A year or 2.
Okay.
Yeah, that
So
was.
he'd already been single for a
So
year
he
or
had
2.
been single for a while, but for myself, I didn't have time to work through my stuff,
Okay.
and I didn't have time to work through the grief, and so going into the marriage, we just had a lot of baggage.
Sure.
Yeah, and it was the first few years were really rough, really rough, and so. Because when you go into a second marriage, when you become a step family, it's really rough. And because he's bringing baggage in, I'm bringing baggage in, and the kids are bringing baggage in, because there's just a lot of grief that comes in
Right.
with it. And so our marriage was really rough. And
So is there a turning point you're coming to? That happened
the
afterwards?
turning point it was more of a process
Okay.
than a specific turning point.
Okay.
The process was more just working through my stuff and working through my grief and realizing, as hard as this is, I'm not going to change anybody else in my family, so I need to work on me. And yeah, because step families, they just bring a lot of stuff in, and so you're not going to change the other person. You got to work on yourself. And so it was a long, long process of working on myself and working through healing, working through grief, and getting rid of my stuff.
So what does that look like, working on yourself? How do you work on yourself?
I had a friend who spent hours and hours with me
Praise God.
and praying with me crying with me, listening to me, and in that process, pursuing the truth of Christ and the healing truth of Christ, and understanding my identity in him, and understanding that this wasn't about everybody else. This was about me, and finding healing and finding freedom and learning how to walk in the truth of Christ.
Wow.
Yeah. And Clint had his own process of finding his healing,
Right.
and I had my process of finding my healing, and it healed our marriage by working on ourselves. It healed our marriage, and it healed our family.
And how's that impacted the kids now that they've seen what God's done for you guys?
It's done healing in them. They understand what it looks like to have a healthy relationship, how to have a healthy family. And it was hard for them, because we had 2 kids that were going back and forth between homes. And then we had 3 kids who lost a dad through death. And so there was massive grief there, and working through...
And telling Clint, you're not my dad.
And telling Clint, you're not my dad. I wasn't their mom. And, and just going back and forth from home to home. There was just a lot of confusion there. And then once they grew up and could make their own decisions, that was healing for them. It was healing for the whole family. So
now you feel like you're walking an inspired marriage.
We have, it's been really good. And we're learning how to do our own thing. The kids are older, and we're learning to do our own thing, doing things together. We just went on vacation together.
Empty nesters yet?
Almost.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah. We have, 2 of them are moved out, and the 3rd one is getting ready to move out, and then we have 2 at home.
So, okay.
So, yeah. But it's been good.
So how do you stay inspired? How do you stay...
I spend a lot of time with Jesus.
What does that mean?
I spend a lot of time with him. I like to go on walks through the woods. I actually have a chair at home that it's me and Jesus. That's my Jesus chair. That's where I spend time with him at home. And I spend time in the Word. I spend time worshiping and journaling. I love to journal and just write things down. Write my thoughts down, and then spend some time listening to him, listening to the Lord. What do you have to say about this? And then writing it down. That's brought a lot of healing too. Listening to him and writing down.
So when you go on walks, you don't have like music with you or whatever. It's just you and God walking and talking.
It's just me and God talking, having conversation with him.
And what does his voice sound like to you? Does it sound like Rose? Does it just sound like Rose's voice? But for some reason you know it's his and not yours?
I know it's him. Just the peace that comes with it, and recognizing his voice. He speaks to me a lot through nature. Clint and I just went on this vacation up to Canada to the Algonquin Provincial Park. We did canoeing and portaging and camping.
And what was the second thing after canoeing?
Portaging.
What is portaging?
It is carrying your backpack and a canoe through the trails. Yeah.
Wow.
So we spent a lot of time, we spent a week doing that, and the Lord just spoke to me last week, spoke to me about his goodness. And because we had been up there before, and this specific lake called Big Trout just killed me every time because there was always a wind coming. There was whitecaps. We were always going against whitecaps. This trip was very different, and it was smooth.
Really?
And the Lord just said to me, see, I am good. Because I've always been afraid of this lake. It's always raised my anxiety level. And this time, he just wanted to show his goodness to me on this lake. And I didn't, at the time, I didn't realize that I was questioning his goodness just because of some things that have been going on. And he said, I just want you to know that I'm good. And so he spoke to me a lot through his nature, through his creation this last week. Wow. And he speaks to me through music. He speaks to me through pictures.
In what way?
He gives me images in my in my mind. He has, like, he's spoken to me through pictures, like healing in my relationship with a specific person. This person wasn't spending time with me, so he gave me a picture of Jesus and I playing with a big red ball. And it just brought healing. That Jesus has interacted with me all the time. He's always been there through my entire life. He's always been there. And to question that, I have,
Right.
And so he speaks to me a lot through pictures, reminding me, I've been there, I've been there, I've been there. And
Right.
he's just consistently been
Right.
in my life through the tough times.
Right. So if somebody that's watching doesn't have that same kind of relationship with God, that they can go for walks and sit in a chair for hours and read and pray and worship, and I'd love to know more about what would you recommend to them? How could someone connect the way you have? What would you say, try this? Because obviously it's not necessarily going to be the same that you do.
Right,
But
right.
what are some things you'd recommend that they try to connect?
I've learned that it takes practice.
For sure.
Getting to know someone, you have to spend time with them. Like getting to know my husband, I had to spend time with him. I had to be intentional in spending time with him. I had to be intentional in conversation with him. I had to carve out time to be with him. And the same with my children. If I want to maintain a relationship with them, I need to carve out time, and I need to be intentional. And it's the same with our relationship with God. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy, and it takes intentionality in doing that. And one thing that I really enjoy doing is, like I said, journaling. Is just, writing down my thoughts and my feelings, and then listening to him. Okay, what do you have to say about this? And then writing it down. That way I can go back and look at and remind myself what he said to me.
And do you sometimes, when you're spending time alone, do you go back and read old journals?
I do.
That's so cool.
I do.
Because I journal a ton, and I never go back and read my old ones, hardly ever.
Yeah. It's just a good reminder of what he's done
Right.
in my life, and how good he is, and how faithful he is, and how
Right.
trustworthy he is.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing. If you guys have more questions for Rose, she lives right here in Michiana, so I'm sure she would meet you for coffee or something like that. You could just message us, and we can connect you. And if you've got other stories of people that are walking with God, whether they've gone through the death of a loved one, or a new blended family, or any of the things that you've seen on our Life Inspired Stories, we'd love for you to send us more names of people that we should put as our guests. So you can message us here for those. So thanks for watching, and thanks for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And God bless you guys today. Y'all have a great weekend. Bye-bye. That was awesome.
Oh, thanks.